All right. So, there's a couple of news stories out this morning that we're going to be talking about. But my warning is out there to America. The police state is alive, well, and growing by the moment. The STINGRAY device is a little bit of treason in every particular city, town, village, and place in the nation. There's an article out in USA Today about how law enforcement is using methods from the NSA's playbook. They basically are getting these devices, which cost about $400,000 a piece, through grant money from the Department of Homeland Security and other federal grants. They're given out under the premise that they can be used to defeat terrorism. But the problem is that they're using them for every little happenstance that happens in their little community. And the problem is that what these devices do, and they're about the size of a suitcase, they put them in a vehicle or a van or anything where they can, it doesn't have to be mounted on a tower. Basically, they go and they sit at an intersection where a cell tower would be, and they stick up the antenna, and this device gathers in all of the data from all the cell phones that are within its range, which can be as narrow as a mile and multi-miles if you're in the right terrain and you're on flat ground and what have you. The point is, what they're doing is they're capturing and gathering all of this data, and they're maintaining this cell phone data, according to them, to help solve crimes, track fugitives and abducted children, or even to foil a terrorist attack. Well, with all due respect, that's what it was for, to foil a terrorist attack. Now, I'm not saying that, abducted children is not a legitimate concern for law enforcement. I'm saying that when you've got a scenario where every little Tom, Dick, and Harry tin pot dictator in every little county and city and town and village around the nation has got this device in their hands, the abuse is guaranteed to happen. In fact, the article goes on to express and it gives some examples of data gathering abuses. But nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to talk instead about how great it is. Well, in Minnesota, state auditors found that 88 police officers in departments across the country had misused their access to personal data in the state driver's license database to look up information on family, friends, girlfriends, and others without proper authorization. And these were only the clear-cut cases. Well, might I remind you that it should be in your recent memory that the IRS has just been doing the same exact thing. They're a weapon of mass destruction against the United States of America. Might I also remind you that the governor of Missouri recently took the entire database of 166,000 Americans who were blameless, 100% within their rights, and lawful to the point where they went and got themselves a concealed carry permit, much to the chagrin of Lieutenant Colonel Bateman. And he gave that information to the Department of Homeland Security, the Social Security Administration, and the ATF so that they could go on a fishing expedition to find out if there was anybody who had both a mental health evaluation and a pistol permit. Really? So you're going to tell me that you're going to do an investigation on 166,000 people in a massive dragnet to find somebody who might have had a pistol permit and sought mental health help? Justify that. Give me one example in the Constitution where you can justify that. In Florida, the state Supreme Court is hearing a case in which a lower court found that the Broward County law enforcement overreached their authority by conducting real-time tracking of the GPS location of a guy's cell phone, using, quote, still undisclosed techniques in collaboration with the cell phone carrier itself. The problem with that case is the cop did so under authority of a court order that defense lawyers said authorized him to get only historical location data about his cell phone. But the guy was capturing it in real time. Suburban Chicago cop responsible for overseeing access to the department's criminal history database used the system to look up his girlfriend's record, including her past boyfriends. Similar cases are popping up all over the place in other states, including stuff resulting in cases involving harassment, stalking, identity theft, and a host of other issues. You see, the problem here, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you give flawed human beings the wherewithal and the ability, they will abuse it. That's human nature. That's why Thomas Jefferson told us that ethics be damned. You bind men down with the chains of a constitution because men cannot be trusted. Neither can Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Bateman. He can't be trusted to take your dog for a walk, much less have input into the Department of Homeland Security's policies concerning your Second Amendment rights. On top of that, an ex-official came out, and this is in the Blaze this morning. I'll put all these articles and links in the comments or in the subject matter section. This guy comes out and he says he's an ex-FBI official. He says the FBI can secretly activate your individual webcam without the indicator light turning on. So, and they've been doing it for years, by the way. This isn't something they started doing a month ago or a couple of weeks ago or even a few months ago or even a year or two ago. They've been at it for several years. So if they have that technology, who else has it? And what are they doing with it? The NSA, the NRO? Most people don't even know what the NRO is, the National Reconnaissance Office. Wait until I get to that topic later on. Their new logo. Nothing is beyond our reach is what their logo says. Nothing is beyond our reach. And the image on their logo is this multi-tentacled octopus enwrapping the planet with an evil-looking sadistic eye. I tell you what, people, you don't even recognize how far down the rabbit hole of tyranny we've fallen until you start looking at what's going on around you and being willing to open your eyes and acknowledge that which you don't ordinarily want to accept. I get it. It's scary stuff. I get it. You don't want to look at that because human nature dictates that if you find out something that is seriously wrong, you must take steps and take action to correct that problem, especially when it concerns your life, your liberty, your freedom, your ability to function. And you don't know what to do. And you're scared. Well, here's my point. And again, this is a quote from Jefferson. When government fears the people, there is freedom. But when the people fear their government, there is tyranny. Accept it, acknowledge it, and be determined to fight it with every fiber of your being. Because it's not just you that's going to be impacted by this. It's your children. It's also those who come after us in generations unthought of. We are living in a police state. I've said that to you many times. A literal, physical police state. The mainstream media is protecting them from exposure because they've been co-opted, corrupted, or they just don't have the will and the motivation to do investigative journalism anymore. They're not all they're interested in doing is hearing about a story, picking up a phone, getting a quote from a government official, and that's the content of their story. Let's not dig any deeper. Let's just take their word for it. Is that an investigative journalist? What did he do? Investigate the number of Congressman so-and-so? I mean, he didn't investigate anything. The truth is, our media has completely and utterly failed us. And when you look at what's going on, where these people are operating so far outside the scope of anything that anyone would even... Forget constitutional, folks. Forget constitutional. The average American I cannot believe that they're not willing to be outraged at what they see around them. Are you that indoctrinated that you're willing to accept this kind of behavior? Forget constitutional. If you don't want to look and think about things in a constitutional fashion, that's fine. If you believe that the Constitution is an outdated document that has no bearing on the reality of the real world, okay, that's your mistake. But you can't sit there and tell me that something's not desperately wrong with a government that seeks to know everything about you, everything that you do, everything you think, everything you read, everything you write, everything you watch, every person you talk to. Well, I don't do anything wrong. I have nothing to fear. That's a fool's game. And that is the same denial that an alcoholic tells themselves when they say, I can quit drinking anytime I want. That's the same excuse that a crackhead gives himself when he says, I can throw this glass pipe away anytime I want. That's the same excuse and the same game that a heroin addict tells himself when he sits there, or his family, and he says, listen, I can give this up anytime I want. Oh, really? Go ahead and put that needle away and let's see you in 8 hours. You see, the truth of the matter is, if you don't believe that where we're headed is the early steps of the same exact types of fascism and Marxism that took over Soviet Russia, China, the entire Eastern front of World War II, not to mention Hitler, you're mistaken. Sadly, the world is a dangerous place, and it is full of men and women who seek to lord it over you, for you to be a subject of them. When you look at something like Bateman, when he in his quotes and in his comments, who is he to make a unilateral dictatorial claim that he has the right to take away your firearms? Who is the National Reconnaissance Office to launch a satellite into the atmosphere that has 29 little satellites that blow out of it and do God only knows what, because it's all secret? You see, the concept of secrecy here is what is ripping our nation apart. Everything's a secret except yours. Every secret that the government has to be kept that way for security. But your secrets, no, they can't be held. You have to open up your entire world to them. The inimitable they, the nameless, the faceless, the unaccountable. Who are they? Who are these people that sit there at computer screens and can look into your life? They don't have to read your actual email. They don't have to hear your actual phone call. They can build a profile on you and know pretty much everything that they need to know about you to determine whether or not you're in the friendly or the enemy camp. And mark my words, once a government has the ability to develop a unified, comprehensive database of individuals that they classify to be enemies, even if this administration doesn't use it, which I doubt, what about the next administration? What about the administration after that? What about some rogue group like the NSA? I mean, to be honest, Sensenbrenner, who was the author of the original Patriot Act, he came out the other day and said James Clapper should not only be prosecuted, but that he ought to be fired and prosecuted combined for lying to Congress. The truth of the matter is, you're giving power and you're authorizing individuals who are untrustworthy and have proven their untrustworthiness with the keys to your entire life, your business, your family, your enterprise, your job, your hopes and your dreams. And you're expecting them to treat them with the same kid gloves that you would. Well, they don't know you, and they couldn't care less about you. You're just another mark. The National Reconnaissance Office, man, I'll tell you what, this group is so out of control. These guys are just flat out dangerous. Their new logo features a giant world-dominating octopus. It's got its tentacles wrapped around the world, the planet. And it's got a, quote, steely glint in its enormous eye. And they use this is the 5-word tagline. Nothing is beyond our reach. Wow. Nothing is beyond our reach. This guy from the ACLU tweeted out, advice to the ODNI Gov. You might want to downplay the massive dragnet spy thing right now. This logo isn't helping. The agency spokesperson for the National Reconnaissance Office says there's a good reason for the symbol. The octopus is intelligent. But it's a malevolent octopus, excuse me. The NROL 39, National Reconnaissance Office, is represented by the octopus, a versatile, adaptable, and highly intelligent creature. Emblematically, enemies of the United States can be reached, no matter where they choose to hide. Nothing is beyond our reach defines this mission and the value it brings to our nation and the war fighters it supports, who serve valiantly all over the globe protecting our nation. So first they come out with the threat, and then they try to ameliorate the threat and play it down a little bit with the claim that, well, what we're really doing all of this for is to save and protect our nation. Save and protect our nation from what? We need save and protecting from you. I'll tell you what. I cannot believe that America has allowed our nation to get to this point. Meanwhile, by the way, countries around the globe are claiming they've had enough. And these are people who have already lived under a long history of tyranny that wasn't just soft tyranny. It was physical hard tyranny, steely glove tyranny. Protesters are all over the place in Kiev, the capital of the Ukraine. I talked about this the other day. And they are literally going out and standing up in the streets in massive examples of massive civil peaceful disobedience. They pulled down a statue the other day in the Ukraine square. And believe it or not, this was a statue of Joseph Stalin. It's still up in 2013. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Their president, who has turned away from a discussion on a joint pact with the European Union, and has instead latched itself onto Russia, their old mean and evil nanny. And the people are saying, whoa, we don't want to go back there. We've been through that already. We don't want to go there again. It's only been 20 years since we got away from that. And yet, government doesn't care. They're more interested in what can we do to hold you down. You see, look, humanity and human nature seek freedom and liberty like a plant seeks light. They long, hunger, and thirst for liberty and freedom, for the right to operate their lives in a way that they feel is best suited for them. And what you believe to be, this slide into socialism or a slide into communism, it's nothing of the sort, folks. The flavor we're building and developing right here in the United States of America is far closer to an evil Marxism or a fascism, the likes of which we saw in Nazi Germany, than it is in anything else. Why do I say that? Well, because the nationalistic type stuff that they keep throwing at us about how they're keeping us safe and they're the only ones who can, about how they promote and prompt this concept of nationalism and patriotism, but it's all geared around what they determine to be your patriotism. My patriotism calls for a nation where my government is hard to find. My government isn't sitting in my bedroom and in my kitchen and in my car and in my place of work. My government doesn't sit there and tell me that I cannot build on my land because there might be some kind of a gnat that grows there. My government doesn't sit there and beat me to death with onerous regulations and rules that dictate what kind of toilet paper I can use and how often I can use it. My idea of a government is one I've got to look for. We believe in microscopic federal government. The same kind that was described and outlined for us by our founders. A government where they are responsible with limited enumerated powers and have an obligation to utilize those powers only for the good of the nation. That the only administrative agency that can exist are two. One, Border Patrol. And two, the Commerce Department. But not this intrastate, interstate commerce nonsense that they shove down our throat for the common good. Not the clauses that they abuse so commonly, so frequently. You know, I told you the other day about how they passed a regulation against plastic firearms. That's the Second Amendment's purview. And they use the Commerce Clause as their constitutional justification for it. To me, that is so insane. We live in a police state, ladies and gentlemen. Wake up to the realities of it. Recognize who is your enemy here. An enemy, I mean that word in its strictest, truest, most literal sense. People like Colonel Bateman, Lieutenant Colonel Bateman, are a clear and present exigent danger to our nation. And no one should make the mistake of thinking that they are not in that position. This guy is a danger to our nation. And no one should make a mistake of thinking he's not. So is the National Reconnaissance Office. So is the FBI, who's doing what the NSA is not allowed to do domestically. But nobody's talking about that. Nobody wants to acknowledge the fact that what the NSA is barred from doing domestically, the FBI is doing on their behalf. And then merely handing all the data off to them through a back office pipe big enough to drive a tractor trailer through. The FBI is doing the same exact thing that the NSA is accused of doing domestically. So the NSA can sit there and have plausible deniability and say, listen, we're not doing that in America. No, the FBI is. But you see, it's a legalese game. And they know doggone well exactly what they're doing. And they're playing our nation, and they're playing you. And the press, boy, they're just complicit in the whole thing. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about federal prisons. They're the model for a massive new police state. And I got to tell you, When you hear the details of how vast the federal prison system has become, and the stuff that they're doing is just, everything is now a federal crime. Well, according to our founders, all law enforcement should have been in the purview of states, with the exception of national crimes of espionage and terrorism and that kind of thing. We'll be back in just a moment.